Hi, welcome to week 5, and today we're going to start learning about healthcare delivery settings or healthcare settings and the places where care is delivered. So this week we're going to talk about the hospital setting, since that's one of the largest parts or components of the healthcare delivery system. As always, make sure you review your PowerPoint for this week for the hospital and read your transcript page that is provided to go along with this unit. That transcript page provides you more information and will also help you with your assignments for the week. Our unit objectives are here, and these are reflective in your course guide. And the structure and function of healthcare organizations. So what we're looking at during the next 3 weeks is departments and functions of hospitals and other healthcare organizations, how they interact, then for the hospital, the types of data that we use, and then the technology's impact on that data. So what is a hospital? A hospital is a healthcare entity that has an organized medical staff and permanent facilities that include inpatient beds and continuous medical or nursing services. They also provide diagnostic and therapeutic services for patients, as well as overnight accommodations and nutritional services. That's a big definition, but basically a hospital has to have an organized medical staff. It has to have inpatient beds. It's got to provide continuous care, provides diagnostic, which diagnoses illness and injuries, and therapeutic, to treat illnesses and injuries. It's an overnight accommodation, and they have to provide dietary services. That is a hospital. So hospitals are classified different ways. A hospital can be classified by what kind of beds it has, what kind of services it provides, what kind of patients they serve. It's for-profit or not-for-profit, and their type of ownership. Now, most of this material came out of your textbook, your Health Information Management Applied Technology, because the material in this book was actually better than what was provided in the Open Education resource. Number of beds, well, they define it as the number of beds that are equipped and staffed for patient care. So a healthcare facility can have licensed beds. So for example, it might be a 100-bed licensed facility. That's the number they are authorized to have. But they also have staffed beds, and that's the actual number of beds that are staffed for coverage. So example, a hospital is licensed for 100 beds, but in reality, maybe they only use 70 beds a day, but they have 30 extra in a case of a healthcare crisis. So they staff for 70 beds because it's inefficient to staff for beds that aren't being used, but could be if they need it. So for example, you might have a hospital that has 40 beds, and you do a visit there, and you look and you say, geez, I don't see over 20 beds. That just means they have 20 beds staffed and ready for use. But if needed, they could add additional beds or open additional rooms. Types of services provided can be specialized, such as rehab hospitals. Rehab hospitals will treat chronic or debilitating illnesses or injuries. Psychiatric hospitals for care of mental disorders and conditions. You can have general hospital, which is an all-purpose hospital that provides a variety of treatments, or a specialty hospital, such as a children's hospital. And notice how a specialty hospital can also describe the type of patient. Hospitals can be for-profit or not-for-profit. Now, for-profit means that they're privately owned, and then if there's leftover money, if they make a profit, that's paid back to shareholders or managers or owners in the way of dividends or bonuses. You don't see a lot of privately owned hospitals. They're very, very rare. Now, a not-for-profit does not mean that the hospital cannot make money. What it means when you're a not-for-profit, if you have funds left, you use that money to go back into the facility for improvements and to finance initiatives. Types of ownership in a hospital. You can have government-owned, proprietary, or voluntary. Government hospitals are usually run by a federal government, a state government, or a local government, like a city hospital. They're often called public hospitals because they're supported by tax dollars. A lot of the hospitals that we have in our demographic area are government owned. Proprietary hospital means they're owned by a private foundation, a partnership, or investors. So think about it. Proprietary hospital would be like St. Jude's Children's Hospital. That is owned by a private foundation. A voluntary hospital is not for profit. It's owned by universities, churches, and charities. St. Jude's could also be a voluntary, depending on how the funding comes from it, donation or foundation. So voluntaries, hospitals could be owned by universities. They're there because of the education. So ownership can be public or private. Public hospitals, remember, are funded by the government. They may have limited resources because funding can be scarce when it's a public hospital. Private hospitals run by private entities, they may have greater resources in which they can draw from. But either type of hospital could exist. Healthcare accreditation, I'm not going to go into that because we've talked about the Joint Commission before, but this is just briefly, the Joint Commission can accredit medical facilities. Currently, they have about 18,000 accredited healthcare organizations, and most of them are hospitals. Community hospitals, okay, these are non-federal, short-term, general, public hospitals. They provide general or specialty care, and they operate on a for-profit or nonprofit. So notice the key word is here, is non-federal, short-term public. Usually a community hospital is owned by a city or a county or some other public entity. The reason why community hospitals are so popular, they're well suited for routine illnesses and surgery, like a gallbladder surgery or an appendix surgery or routine illness such as treatment of someone who has pneumonia. All around purposeful care. That's usually very cost effective, and most importantly, a community hospital provides accessible care. In a community, when you have a population who may be older, care in other facilities may be inaccessible because of distance, so a community hospital provides care at home or close to home. Critical access hospital is a term. A lot of our hospitals in Northeast Iowa are critical access. For example, Veterans Memorial Hospital, Waukon is critical access. That is a special designation by Medicare. What happened was they found that hospitals, small hospitals, were not getting equal reimbursement from Medicare. So the critical access was developed. And what it says, you're going to get a little bit bump in your Medicare payment and reimbursement for treating a Medicare patients. But you have to be certified as critical access. So typically they are licensed acute care hospitals in rural locations, and sometimes they're health clinics. But this reimbursement, this little bump, kept many small hospitals from closing. To get this designation, it comes from CMS, and if you recall, that's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they have to participate in the Medicare Rural Hospital Flexibility Program. They have to be able to provide 24-hour emergency care. They can't have more than 25 inpatient beds. And the average acute care stay, the average stay of a serious illness has to be about 96 hours or less. So if you took all their patients in acute care stay over a year, that average length of stay has to be less than 96 hours. And they have to be located more than 35 miles from another hospital. If they meet that, then they can be a critical access. Another kind of hospital is a teaching and research hospital. So these are large institutions, are usually associated with medical schools. So in Iowa, think the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. It's a teaching and research hospital, and that's what they do. They usually got the best, the latest technology, the use of surgery. They treat very complex medical conditions. So if you get someone who's burned over 90% of their body, they're going to go to this teaching research hospital. They also work with rare diseases. Their goal is to teach physicians and other healthcare providers. They do medical research. They provide care for a community, And they also accept patients who do not have insurance. An example, one of the oldest hospitals in the country is Massachusetts General Hospital, and it is a teaching and research hospital. A hospital system is 2 or more hospitals owned by a corporation, and they have a single board of directors. That's a hospital system. We have a lot of hospital systems in Iowa because it's more economically feasible. A network is that group of hospitals, physicians that collaborate to provide care in a community. So for an example, Greenville Hospital System University Medical Center in South Carolina has lots of locations and their research and teaching. Hospital systems are becoming more common. So, a modern hospital has to have an organized medical staff. They have to have permanent inpatient beds. An inpatient, the definition is someone who's been formally admitted, receives around-the-clock care, and that's generally considered greater than 24-hour care to be an inpatient. And they have to get diagnostic and therapeutic treatment. That means this is what you have to have. Okay, I'm going to stop here. We're 11 minutes in. I'm going to shut this off and do another one that you can log into, because we're going to talk about how a hospital is structured. And this part is important because these questions, what you see here, are often going to be on your RHIT exam at some point in the future.